Hi, my name is Clare Creedon. I've been studying architecture in the joint UCC CIT programme and I've just finished my 4th year. I chose to study architecture because art was one of my favourite subjects in school and I've always been interested in designing things, drawing, making things and using my hands, but at the same time there's a practical side to me and I like paying attention to detail and knowing how things work. And so for me, architecture was a nice balance between being able to use your imagination and be as creative as possible while also being quite grounded in reality. So I really enjoyed the subject itself. Architecture is about making spaces for people and you can be as creative as you want in terms of new ways of accommodating those functions, and you also want to make spaces pleasant for people to use. And I also really enjoy the design process and the fact that there's a lot of stages to it, that you have to kind of look into the history of a site, the climate you're working in, the materials you want to use, and all of that kind of means that it's always interesting and that you're always kind of surprised at the end of the building that you've created. But on top of that, what makes this course different to a lot of courses is that it's not all lecture hall based. There's actually the studio atmosphere, so everyone has their own desk, their own spot. There's a class of about only 40 students. Your lecturers will end up knowing most of you by name, and they come around and give you one-on-one tutorials. So for 10 or 15 minutes they speak to you and you only about your project and what you're working on. So there's a lot of support there, and even though you're working on a project on your own most of the time, you always have the atmosphere and the collaboration of having your friends around you and having their input, which is really helpful. And what's also really nice about the course is that you get to go on a field trip every year. So in my time I went to Amsterdam, Berlin, Madrid, Oxford, and so you go away for a few days with your whole class and your lecturers, and you get to see a lot of contemporary and historic architecture that you wouldn't really see in a city like Cork. And you just keep a sketchbook at the end and you record everything you've seen in sketches and photographs and notes, and that's a really, really just fun and pleasant thing to do every year. There's definitely challenges associated with the course. I think probably when you're starting out first, the most daunting thing is, how will I have this light bulb moment and suddenly have this building? But that's never really how it works. So not to be put off by that, because you'll learn how the design process kind of feeds into what your building will end up being. And there's so many factors that will help inspire you along the way. And I think also what can be daunting for first year students is that there's a system of doing crits or reviews. So at the end of every project, you stand up, you pin up your drawings behind you, and you have to explain your project to your lecturers and your class. So definitely that's challenging at the start, but it gets much easier with time. And I think it's actually a really useful skill, no matter what career you go on to have afterwards, to be able to present yourself like that, and to be able to take on constructive criticism, but also filter, because you'll be getting lots of opinions from lots of people because it's very subjective. So to be able to filter what you're hearing and choose what's the best way forward yourself. I think also what can be a challenge for students is the timekeeping of architecture. So it's not like courses where it's all kind of weighted towards exams at the end. You'll only have a small number of written exams and it's all really portfolio based. So it means that it's a series of projects throughout the year and deadlines throughout the year. So you kind of have to keep on top of it, because it's a time consuming thing and it's not something you can just do at the end. But at the same time, that's actually quite suitable for people who don't do well in kind of an exam system. And once you get on top of that, I actually think it's a better way of learning. So there isn't actually a work placement built into the course. You spend 4 years entirely in college. But having said that, in my second year, there was a housing project run as an in-house competition. So on the housing scheme that we had to do anyway, they chose 2 students to be given a placement in the Cork County Council Architects Department. And so me and another friend got to do that, and that was a really worthwhile experience. We got to go on a lot of site visits. We were given a lot of freedom and it wasn't very pressurised. So we were kind of given hypothetical projects and were able to come up with our own ideas. We did model making for them, and we were able to sit in on meetings. And we also kind of upskilled on a lot of our software skills with Photoshop and InDesign. So that was really, really worthwhile. And then on top of that, I have also managed to find work myself 2 other summers in private practice. And in that case, you're doing a real job for the company, and so it's not maybe as glamorous. and you will be doing kind of smaller mundane tasks, but it's really good just to experience being in the environment of a studio and getting to see all the projects that they're working on, and again going on some really interesting site visits. So I really recommend that to students to try and do that. So my advice for Leaving Cert students who are interested in architecture is, as long as you're interested, that's the main thing, and not to be put off thinking that it's a hugely technical course, because maths wasn't my strongest subject in school. I came from it from an artistic background, and when I arrived into first year I felt like I had a good skill set and I didn't feel out of place. And at the same time there was other people who arrived in from schools having done tech graph or metalwork or woodwork or physics, and they had their own set of skills that were useful also. But definitely in the first year there's a series of projects that are kind of fun, short, and it's not about building buildings straight away, and they kind of loosen everyone up and help bring everyone's skills up to kind of a more even playing field, which is really helpful. So the main thing is just to know that it's a subject you're interested in. Maybe just look up architects and architecture and maybe get an idea of what you might like, and then you can even look up like student portfolios of work to see what kind of things you might be working on. Yeah, I think it's really positive that CIT will become part of MTU. Obviously my course has always been affiliated with the university, but I think a lot of my lecturers mainly lecture in CIT, and I think I've received a really good education, and so that it's a good thing that it will be recognised as university standard.